So, I mean, you're talking to an audience of sports PTs. So
Sure.
we're good with the field athlete. Every once in a while we get a combat athlete, but you mentioned how the demands are different even compared to the field athlete. Give me some specifics on that.
So, like, if I'm working with a field athlete, for the most part, like, what are the demands of a field athlete? Like, they have to be able to run, they have to be able to sprint, they have to be able to decelerate, they have to be able to cut. All, and then you could take a throwing athlete, they got to be able to throw. So in jiu-jitsu, there's like things that, like, another thing I would say with jiu-jitsu athletes is the goal of jiu-jitsu isn't necessarily to be a better athlete than your opponent, is you're using the skill to make them a worse athlete. So you're going to see a lot of jiu-jitsu athletes that are like terrible athletes. Like, they don't need to be good at running. A lot of them don't do strength and conditioning. Their version of cardiovascular training is just doing the sport. So those are some important things you have to consider. Next is things that would be traditionally, like, what I would say that a lot of PTs run into is, like, let's say they're working with someone who's a back injury. They're like, we're going to do a lot of core training in neutral. Have you ever seen jiu-jitsu? My spine is never in a neutral position. I'm in a twisted, rotated, flex position with load, dynamic load, because somebody's like, trying to get to my neck or get to my leg or something. So that's not going to exist, right? So it's like, well, how do we prepare the spine for the demands of the sport? And again, like I said, neutral spine doesn't exist. Next, we could kind of say for something like hip mobility, I would say you'd kind of like maybe look at like a dancer per se, where like you kind of want abnormal hip mobility that like a baseball player has no need for, right? So that's going to be something that's important, but it's not solely flexibility. So again, I could be super bendy, but the problem is I have to be strong in those weird positions, because it could be someone where somebody's like torquing my arm. Again, we're thinking PT, right? So it's not just, do I need sufficient shoulder internal rotation, but someone's literally trying to like go to the point where it gets to its breaking point. So I need to be strong in that end range. I need to have strong eccentric control there, because again, maybe that's not enough where I can stop or avoid the submission, but maybe that just gives me a little bit buffer to tap so I don't get hurt. Maybe it gives me a buffer so that like the tissue in the shoulder is just getting a little bit more resilient, because, I would say clinically, strength is range of motion specific. So if you're not training your shoulder rotation, you're not training your hip rotation, when you're put in these weird positions, your body is not going to be prepared for it.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I've worked with a number of UFC fighters, not good athletes, dude. It's crazy.
They're not.